Hey, what's up guys, it's Hedrymas here. In this video I'm going to go over the talents and the rotation for Elemental Shaman in its current state in the Shadowlands. Overall, Elemental plays very similar to BFA, but with the removal of Azerite traits and the addition of Covenant abilities, a few things have changed around. So I'm going to go over the single target build, the AoE build, and how to play both of them. I'm only going to show the Necrolords in action because I don't have more than one Shaman, and the other Covenants are pretty straightforward anyway, so I think the Necrolords is pretty much the best one to show off. So for single target, on the first row you want to run Echo of the Elements. This gives you 2 Lava Burst charges, which makes it way easier to manage and wastes less Lava Burst, which is an overall increase in DPS. For the second row, for single target, Elemental Blast is the pick. This is basically a very strong generator which will do a lot of damage, and it will buff either your crit, your haste, or your mastery by a certain percentage for 10 seconds. And basically the way this works is, if you cast it and it overloads because of your mastery, you could get 2 buffs instead of 1. Then third row is whatever you want. Personally I would go for Spirit Wolf, but this is just whatever you want to pick. Then fourth row, Master of the Elements. What Master of the Elements does is every time you cast a Lava Burst, you increase the damage of the next Nature, Physical, or Frost spell by 20%, which is pretty strong because most of your other spells can be buffed by this. Then this row, it's personal pick again. Windrush Totem works well, Nature's Guardian works well, Ancestral Guidance works well. You can go with whatever you fancy pretty much. Then for the level 45 row, I would go for Ice Fury. Ice Fury basically, it's a cast that generates a lot of Maelstrom, 25 Maelstrom. It empowers your next 4 Frost Shocks to deal 300% increased damage and generate 8 Maelstrom. These Frost Shocks hit very hard. So basically it's like changing your Lightning Bolt with a Frost Shock that just hits harder than a Lightning Bolt. Then for the last row we want to be running with Stormkeeper. Stormkeeper overall will just give you the best damage and it's very versatile, it's very easy to use, it doesn't really have many downsides. So now I'll be showing you the single target rotation. Now 5 seconds before the pull you want to cast Stormkeeper. Then a few seconds before the pull you want to cast either Elemental Blast or Lava Burst. In our case it's Elemental Blast because we use the talent. Then after that, depending on if you are Necrolord or not, if you are Necrolord you want to be casting your Primordial Wave. If you are not a Necrolord, you want to cast your Flame Shock. Then you want to cast your Fire Elemental to get it off cooldown. And then the rotation basically goes from there. So let me show you. So 5 seconds before the pull, I would do Stormkeeper. Then I precast my Elemental Blast. Primordial Wave, Fire Elemental, Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt, which is empowered by Stormkeeper, Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt. I'm at high Maelstrom, so this. I had a Lava Burst proc there, which I could have used to empower my next, what's it called? Earth Shock, but it came out just after I pressed the button. So see, now what I'm doing is I'm basically trying to empower these Frost Shocks with my Lava Burst. Now I am making a few mistakes because I'm trying to think about explaining at the same time. But you see, I never really cast 2 Lava Bursts in a row. I do a Lava Burst and I do another ability, Lava Burst, other ability. Now my Primordial Wave is up again. I will Lava Burst now. It will do a double Lava Burst, which is pretty cool. Want to make sure I buff my Earth Shock. Now a lot of things come off cooldown at the same time. See, sometimes you will also basically just waste some stacks of your Frost Shocks, or Ice Fury rather. But that's completely okay because at the current haste levels, we just, even at like very high haste levels, it's very hard to make sure you get all your Frost Shocks off, pretty much. Yeah, you see, I'm just casting Lava Bursts in between other abilities. Sometimes with these haste levels, I will just kind of spam my Frost Shocks just to make sure I get them off cooldown. Also with Elemental Blast, you have to watch out, it generates a lot of Maelstrom, so ideally you want to be buffing your Elemental Blast with a Lava Burst, but sometimes it's just not possible just because of the amount of Maelstrom it generates, and sometimes you might overcap, like right now I'm buffing it, which is great. Now I'm not gonna cast Earth Shock yet, because I can buff it now with a Lava Burst. Now my Stormkeeper is back off cooldown, I will cast Ice Fury again, generate a lot of Maelstrom, Lava Bursts, Lightning Bolts. I probably shouldn't have cast this because now I'm going to overcap, but that's okay. Because I didn't overcap by much, and if you would delay your Elemental Blast by too much, then you would basically lose DPS. Like there is a point at which if you try to complicate things too much, you will most likely lose DPS. Like the cooldown of Elemental Blast isn't that long. So if you, for example, waste other abilities or you delay too long, then you might as well, you know, it's just, yeah, losing DPS basically. What you could do, however, for example, is try to save one Lava Burst for when your Elemental Blast is about to come off cooldown. So now I'm going to save an Elemental Lava Burst. So now I'm going to Lava Burst. Now this is off cooldown, Elemental Blast. Now Elemental Blast, which is buffed by the Lava Burst. Now I am going to buff my Earth Shock. So in general, it's pretty straightforward. The one thing about Elemental Shaman that's kind of complicated is just the sheer amount of like different things you can press, especially if you play with Elemental Blast and Ice Fury. Because sometimes you just have to make sacrifices in one place to gain DPS at another place. So this takes some time to get used to as well. Like I wouldn't worry about too much. I'm personally not playing perfect either because I haven't, for example, the raid is not out yet, so I haven't like tried the raid yet, but it will come over time. Now, one thing before we go to the AoE rotation that I want to mention is you have a priority list of what you want to buff with Master of the Elements. In general, it goes like this. Elemental Blast should be your top priority. As you saw me play, I actually fucked it up quite a lot, but that's because I'm also explaining at the same time, and you actually need to kind of think ahead of when you want to maybe save a Lava Burst for like 1 second to then cast your Elemental Blast after, because usually, you know, you have 2 stacks of Lava Burst, which kind of allows you to do that, which I didn't really do because I was explaining at the same time. But in general, you want Elemental Blast is top priority. If you are Night Fae, then you want to try and make sure that your Night Fae ability is also buffed by Master of the Elements, because your Night Fae ability has quite a long cooldown, it hits really hard, and if you buff that by 20%, you gain so much more value from it. So Elemental Blast, Master of the Elements. Then the next one up is Earthquake, which you want to try and buff whenever you can, but like I'm about to show you, you want to only really buff it if you have an instant cast of Lava Burst. Then you want to buff your Earth Shock if you're about to cap on Maelstrom. If you're not about to cap on Maelstrom, however, then you want to make sure you buff your Lightning Bolt empowered by your Stormkeeper. So this one, this big boy that hits super hard. So let me show you how hard it hits. You see that 13k crit? If I didn't buff that by 20%, it would have done a lot less damage. Like, imagine, look at that, 17k damage with one ability. Now it's possible I'm skilled in this area, but from the rotation I was doing, I don't believe I am. I think I'm actually doing the damage I normally do. Then below Stormkeeper, buffed Lightning Bolt, it's probably Frost Shock, buffed by Ice Fury. Then an Earth Shock, even if you're at like 60 Maelstrom, for example. Then Ice Fury, then Lightning Bolt, and then just Frost Shock. But in general, like, you're never gonna cast a Frost Shock by itself. Unless you have no globals and you have to walk somewhere. Or you have no abilities that are instant cast and you have to walk somewhere, you don't have your Spirit Walker's Grace available, stuff like that. Now the reason I mentioned Earth Shock twice in there is because if I'm doing the rotation here, for example, once I hit 60 Maelstrom, I can cast Earth Shock, but I have 40 Maelstrom to play with, so I can do another Lava Burst and then do my Stormkeeper buffed Lightning Bolt, for example, and I'm still not at 100 Maelstrom. Now this is mainly the other abilities, which are not Earth Shock, are timed by, or they have a time or duration before they run out. So it's more important to try and buff one of those when you're not at 100 Maelstrom yet, or close to 100 Maelstrom, if you can buff one of the other ones. So now, I am at 99 Maelstrom, I do want to prioritize buffing my Earth Shock over any other ability. But now, I'm gonna go over the AoE rotation. Now on AoE, I'm gonna tell you the build I personally run, and then I'm gonna tell you what build I would recommend, depending on what kind of player you are, or how skilled you are at playing Elemental Shaman. Now for the AoE build, I would run with pretty much the exact same build, except for Elemental Blast and change that to Aftershock. Now for the first row, I would still go Echo of the Elements, because having 2 Lava Burst charges is just so nice. I personally believe it should be built into the spec, but here we are. You can, however, also go Earthen Rage. Earthen Rage is just some free damage, basically. You don't have to do anything for it, so there's nothing you have to think about when you use this. But either of these. Then the second row, you go Aftershock, because with Aftershock, it has a chance to refund the Maelstrom spent on Earthquake. So sometimes you can get like 4 Earthquakes in a row on a pack, which is really, really nice. Then for the level 35 row, personally, I would go for Master of the Elements. What you can do with Master of the Elements is on AoE, you can use a Lava Burst proc to buff your next Earthquake, basically. Which is really, really nice. Now, the other things you can go Liquid Magma Totem, but personally, in my experience, having the tank keep mob still for 15 seconds is pretty damn hard. I already struggle having the tank keep my mob still for the amount of time it takes for my Earthquake to go off. So you can go Liquid Magma Totem, but I personally wouldn't recommend it. I think you'll end up losing more DPS than with Master of the Elements. Now another option is Storm Elemental. I personally wouldn't go this unless it's a dungeon where you do big pulls and you just need the massive damage, because you can just spam Chain Lightning, spam Earthquakes, and do a load of damage. They did reduce, for example, the active ability that Primal Elementalist gets if you go, that Storm Elemental gets if you go with Primal Elementalist. So because it's AoE cap now, it's not as strong as it used to be, but it's still an option if you want to go for it. But personally, I will go show you Master of the Elements because that is my pick, and I think the best pick. Then here, Ice Fury or Primal Elementalist. I would personally go Ice Fury. Now on AoE, you will not be casting Ice Fury at all, but I like to make bosses go a little bit faster, because what Primal Elementalist will give you is, it will just remove a button from your bar, which it might make it easier, and it will give your Storm Elemental, Fire Elemental some more damage, which is nice on AoE. And of course you also have the active ability, which will drop a Meteor, which is also very useful for AoE. Now this will make AoE slightly faster, but I personally believe that Ice Fury in general will be nicer for like the very strong mobs. Like if there's a pack with one strong mob, weak mobs, you can use Ice Fury to kill the strong mob faster, and you can just use it to kill bosses faster as well. Now on the last row, Stormkeeper, my pick. I don't see Ascendance. I don't see why you would ever go Ascendance personally on AoE. And Unlimited Power is, I don't know why this is in the game. It's, our Mastery is the most useless thing ever right now. So Unlimited Power won't really do much for you. So in general, I would go for Stormkeeper. Now let me show you the AoE rotation. I'll show you the AoE rotation on 4 targets here. Now what I like to do when I start with the AoE rotation is, for example, we're pre-pulling, or we're pulling a pack in a dungeon. I will make sure I pre-cast my Stormkeeper. Then when the tank goes in, I will do a Flame Shock, Primordial Wave, and then Chain Lightning, Earthquake, Chain Lightning. Oh, I have another Flame Shock, Lightning Bolt, which will now shoot 4 Lightning Bolts and buff my next Earthquake, and then Chain Lightning basically. I keep my Flame Shocks up on multiple targets as well, and see now I have a Lava Burst proc, I use it to buff my Earthquake. So basically the reason I put Flame Shocks up is it's extra damage, but the most important thing is I can buff my Earthquakes with it. So every time I'm about to cast an Earthquake and I have a proc, I will make sure that I cast Lava Burst first to get the buff on AoE damage. So see now a Lava Burst proc. And now the nice thing about, oh, I can, now there I didn't have a Lava Burst proc, so I didn't cast Lava Burst. Now I have Primordial Wave, then I Lava Burst, get a ton of Maelstrom, buff my next Earthquake, just Earthquake again because I didn't get a proc. Otherwise I would have Lava Bursted first. So Lava Burst, Earthquake, Chain Lightning, Earthquake, Chain Lightning, Lava Burst to buff my Earthquake again, Earthquake, do another Flame Shock. So yeah, like I said, the main reason I keep up these Flame Shocks is when you get Primordial Wave, for example, well, just in general, I want it for the procs of Lava Burst so I can buff my Earthquakes. But in general, when you have Primordial Wave up, if you cast Primordial Wave and then do 1 proc of Lava Burst, you will hit all these 4 targets with a strong Lava Burst, and you will generate a ton of Maelstrom. You'll basically generate so much Maelstrom most likely that you can just cast a full Earthquake instantly. Like see, it was 60 here, Maelstrom that I was on. Then I cast Primordial Wave, did 1 Lava Burst proc, and instantly I was at full Maelstrom. So in general, on 4 targets, 3 targets, I would just Chain Lightning, keep my Flame Shocks up, and just use Lava Burst procs to buff Earthquakes. Now, one question I had personally was, should I hardcast a Lava Burst to buff an Earthquake? And in general, you don't really want to hardcast a Lava Burst to buff an Earthquake, because in the time you would be hardcasting a Lava Burst, you could be doing 1 Chain Lightning, which will give you more value for your next, like it will just allow you to cast your next Lava Burst so much faster that it's probably not worth to hardcast a Lava Burst. Now, let's say because you're playing with Aftershock, let's say you're at full Maelstrom, or you do an Earthquake, and then it resets and you're at full Maelstrom and you get a lava burst proc. Is it worth to lava burst and then earthquake? Or should you earthquake because you're capped on Maelstrom? In general, because it takes quite a while to actually gain the Maelstrom to do an earthquake, usually, I would still use the lava burst proc to do an earthquake, even if I'm at 100 Maelstrom. If I, of course, don't have a lava burst proc, I will not earthquake. If I don't have lava burst proc, I will not buff my earthquake with lava burst. So basically, this is the AoE rotation. It's very simple. And in general, one thing I like to do, I don't know how many of you have bought this trinket, but I have bought the Dark Moon deck, mainly for item level, because I like item level. But in AoE, it's actually really nice. So I'm gonna wait here 30 seconds for my Stormkeeper and I'll show you. So basically what I would like to do is, when I start on a pull, because I have precast Stormkeeper and I'm about to like burst on AoE, this trinket lasts for 10 seconds. What you can do is you can pull, so you basically do your Flame Shock, then you do your Primordial Wave, then you can use the trinket, then you can use your Stormkeeper Chain Lightning, Earthquake, Stormkeeper Chain Lightning, Earthquake, and everything will gain a certain amount of extra crit chance depending on, you know, what your trinket rolled, which is just in general, it's some extra damage. Like, crit is very valuable for us, and on Lava Burst, crit does nothing because Lava Burst always crits, but on AoE, crit is actually quite valuable because, as you know, Shaman hits 2.5 times harder with crit. So let me show you here. I will do my Stormkeeper. So now we're pulling. Flame Shock, Primordial Wave, Trinket, Chain Lightning, Earthquake, Chain Lightning, Earthquake. And if you're lucky, you get a few resets on Earthquake, basically. And then, like here, you saw one thing you should note is I was at only like 30 Maelstrom, but I had a Lava Burst proc. Now, normally, if you would Lava Burst, you would not gain enough Maelstrom to cast an Earthquake, and it would be a waste of a Lava Burst on AoE. But because I know I had Primordial Wave up, it would hit 3 targets, and I would definitely get enough Maelstrom to cast my next Earthquake. And that way, I also make sure I don't overcap. Now, another thing is, when you cast Primordial Wave, you don't have to instantly cast your Lava Burst. Like here right now, I'm not casting Lava Burst. The buff lasts for 15 seconds. Like now I have a proc, and then I cast a Lava Burst. On AoE, I'm fairly sure that in 15 seconds, you'll get a proc. Because that way, you're not wasting any time hard casting a Lava Burst when you could be casting Chain Lightning, for example. Oh, see, here we have a reset. We just buff it again with a Lava Burst. So technically, if it would keep resetting, we could keep buffing it with Lava Burst if we would keep getting procs, which would be great. Now, one last rotation I want to show you is something special to Elemental Shaman. Some classes have it as well, but it's mainly special to Elemental Shaman. That is a funneling build, which basically means you put everything into one target and you use other targets to increase that damage. So for example, there's one boss in the raid, which is 3 bosses, but when one boss goes to 0 HP, both other bosses heal back to full, which means that you only want to be focusing on one target and you can use those other targets to gain DPS. So let's say those are the 3 bosses, the left target dummy, right target dummy, center target dummy, and we want to focus the center one. So what we do is we do the exact same rotation we would do on single target, but we use the other 2 to increase our DPS. And what I mean by that is we put Flame Shocks on them, and what the Flame Shocks will allow us to do is it will give us more Lava Bursts. And when we have more Lava Bursts, Lava Burst procs, we can just spam instant Lava Burst on one target, which will increase our DPS by a lot. So let's do a normal pull here, and let's use the funneling technique. So I put another Flame Shock up, and just do the normal rotation. Now this has gotten nerfed a little bit, as opposed to last expansion, where last expansion, our Flame Shocks, they what's it called? They ticked way faster. So they ticked 50% faster, which means we would get a lot more procs than we do now. But we still, on 3 targets, get quite a bit of procs. So you see what I'm doing? Just keep up the Flame Shocks and then funnel them all into one target. Like all the instant Lava Bursts you gain from the Flame Shocks. Also, this kind of helps Primordial Wave because now I'm shooting lava burst to all of these targets, and they gain Maelstrom for all of the targets. It basically allows us to buff pretty much every ability as well. So when you think about it, with Master of the Elements, it's just not just the fact that we have a lot of instant lava burst, it's just the fact that we can buff pretty much every ability with a lava burst at this point, because we get so many procs. Whoops, I accidentally targeted the wrong one. Sometimes I will even cast like 2 lava bursts in a row, depending on the situation, because I know I'm gonna get more lava burst than I usually will. But yeah, that's basically the funding rotation. Now, I don't know. Okay, it's not splitting the targets up, sadly, so I can't really show you how much I'm doing on the one target. It's basically a lot more than you would normally be doing on one target. Anyway, thank you for watching my video. If you have any questions, you can always ask them in the comments, or you can stop by my stream. I'm streaming most days during Shadowlands, basically. I'm also going to stream progression, so in between now and progression, and during progression you can ask whatever questions you want, and I'll probably reply pretty much instantly, unless I'm like in the middle of a boss fight or something. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll hope to see you in the next video.